Welcome to our home office, but is it really a room if it doesn't have a door? In this video, we're going to fix that. I had this pocket door system installed when we were renovating, and then I made a very optimistic marketplace purchase for some doors. They needed to be totally stripped and repainted, and I did a bad job, so they've just been kind of leaning up against the wall in my workshop for the past 9 months. Now that we're working on this room though, it's finally time to tackle it again. I've learned some new methods of paint stripping, so let's head to the workshop and I will show you what we're working with. Oh, did I forget to mention they're also totally the wrong size for this opening, so we're gonna have to do a lot of finagling to make them fit. But they're just so beautiful and perfect, and I'm very stubborn, so we're gonna make them work. This has been horrendous. Gorgeous doors from Marketplace, and they have just been sitting in this kind of sad corner of my workshop for 9 months untouched because stripping them has been such a journey. I was mostly using this stripper and a scraper, but it was really hard to get into all of the beading details without damaging them. So that's when I picked up some of these brushes that are, some of them are nylon, some of them are steel, and they did a pretty good job, especially when the paint was softened from the stripper, but still so laborious, which is why I gave up for almost a year. But I have a new method I want to try. When I was working on these spindles for my handrail, I discovered these nylon brushes that you can fit into drills, which saved me so much time because I just clamped my drill to the table and then put a clamp on the trigger, so it was constantly rolling around, and then I just kind of like fed the spindles into it. So having this be power operated will hopefully make the rest of this stripping process a bit easier. And because it's nylon, it won't damage the glass. The front of the doors look pretty good, but I know the back sides need much more work. So I'm going to get them onto the workbench and use my new favorite nylon brush tool to hopefully speed along the process of cleaning them all up. Stepping on your roller coaster. Okay, this is going to work. It's just going to take a while. I definitely need eye protection. The only goggles I have are covered in white paint, so I'm going to clean these up and then hopefully clean this up. Into the ocean, wanna feel like I spent several days with my wire brush attachment trying to clean up all of the beading. I also did some more stripping, some more sanding, and I had to repair the top of one of the doors. And finally I went in with these wax carving tools to scrape out any extra bits of paint I couldn't get to with the wire brush. And we're left with 2 doors that, although they're not perfectly stripped, I simply do not have the patience to do any more of this. I think that it's all gonna be smooth enough that when I paint it, which is the plan, it will look hopefully good and new. The next step of the process is going to be to lengthen both of the doors so that they fit in the doorway better. I bought a long strip of pine, which is slightly thicker than the door, and my plan is to glue this to the bottom with some dowels to keep it aligned, and hopefully that will work okay and not slowly come apart over the years. I also cut these notches on either side of the door so that I can clamp the bottom on and hopefully get it nicely glued down. This is okay because we're going to have to trim the width of the doors anyway. If you ask me now whether this project is worth it, I would say no, not at all. This has been horrendous. I think I could have bought basically this door for like 200 quid, and I've spent so long doing this. I've spent so long, it's not even going to be very good. But it's always worth it to do something once, to learn, and I have learnt that I don't want to do any more stripping ever again. Okay, let's proceed. Every time I'm going out, the same things keep happening. I've only doweled something once before, and it went pretty well without me having to think much about it. So I do have this little guide block that would help me drill perfectly vertically down, but I already have a bit of tape on this drill bit that's the perfect depth, and I think I back myself for being able to drill pretty well vertically. Let's see. With these little center points, I pop them in the holes I've made, and then I will clamp the piece to the door, and it will make a little mark where we want the dowels to be on this side. So I'm trying to line this up so there's a little bit of a gap here and a little bit of gap on the other side. Okay, all my holes are lining up as they should. Okay, I have now glued extenders to both doors, and there's a bit of a gap there, but hopefully nothing that can't be filled. Next up, I'm going to cut off these little annoying horn bits. I'm going to trim the door to length and plane down the extender pieces so they match the doors. And after that, I'm going to take one home and install it just so I can check the width situation before bringing them back here and handling whatever the width situation turns out to be. That is cool. That is so cool. Okay, now I get to describe the dilemma to you. The dilemma is that on this side, that looks fantastic, doesn't it? That's just the size of the door as it is. The problem is on the other side. Okay, this plant is kind of in the way, but I hope this demonstrates my point. Here, it is exactly in the middle and it cuts off some of the glass panes. So ideally it would be in a position somewhere like about there. I have calculated that if this was just there, just about showing the edge of the lights, which actually, because it's set back a little bit from this wall, really doesn't look too bad. Then we have like an inch and a bit on this side, which I think is enough to look good. So I'm taking off around half of this style, and then I need to add more on this side to fill the gap. And I think it would look a little bit weird from this side to have such a skinny middle style and then have this like big fat bit of wood going down the side. It is less than I thought it was going to be, to be honest, so maybe it won't look too weird. But I thought it might be nice if I rooted in some sort of decoration on this side to make it look a bit more intentional. I was originally thinking of using, I think it's called like a bullnose router bit, and doing just like a few really long grooves into it here. But I also think it would be cool if I just did like little rectangles that mimic this shape, or like maybe just went fully off the side. I think I'm gonna have to draw up some ideas to figure out exactly what I want to do there. Hello, we are back in the workshop with both the doors, and now I know exactly how much I need to take off the inside and add to the outside to make it fit in the doorway. So let's smash through all of that boring trimming and doweling so we can get to the decorative part. Taking bed, a sun to set, and maybe we're falling. This thing may all be over before it's begun. Let's get it now over before it's begun. You don't seem to be a bad one. Don't seem to be a sad one. And I'm looking for a good time. I think it took me 5 workshop half days to get these doors to the right size, but they are finally perfect. And I managed to clean off all of the stripper residue from the glass panes, thankfully with just glass cleaner. And now they look like actual doors. They are looking so good. The final thing that needs to be done before finishing is adding that router detail I talked about. The other night I sat down on my tablet and drew out the doors in place with a bunch of different color combinations because I'm not entirely sure what color I want to go with yet. But I also drew out my options for router details, and I decided that my original idea of just doing 2 or 3 grooves down the length of the doors will look the best. I did like the look of the panes going off the sides, but I think it looked a bit too kind of like Art Deco and a bit too try hard. Like, I don't actually want to draw attention with this detail. I want it to use up space in your mind so you don't look at it and say, why is that bit so wide when the middle is so thin? I bought this set of router bits. They're actually called box core bits, and I got 8 different sizes, and I really don't know what size I want to do and how I want to space them and how deep I want to go. So I'm going to sit down and draw out a few different options and then make maybe a few practice pieces before I actually go into the doors. My one saving grace here is that if I mess up the first time I do it, I can just flip them over and do it again. But no, we're gonna do it right first time, hopefully. I know that there is a 95mm gap between the edge of this beading and where the door reveal is gonna be. So I grabbed a piece of scrap wood and drew a line down at 95mm. And I'm gonna draw out some options on here with a Sharpie for the spacing and the size of the router detail. Hopefully that will help me decide which design I want to do, so I don't have to do as many actual test pieces with the router. I'm gonna do one more, which I think could be the one. This may look like just some random black bars, but I promise it is rooted in logic. I want all of the dimensions in here to be based off the dimensions in the doors. So measuring the bar between each panel is 26mm. So that's 7mm of beading, 12mm of the middle, and 7mm beading on the other side. So those are the gaps that I have created here, are all based around those measurements. This is one of those like weird design tricks where it will just kind of feel more harmonious without you really understanding why. If I root this detail, pun intended, in the existing geometry of the doors. I love this kind of low fidelity prototyping. It really helps me just discard a bunch of ideas. I could have spent hours and hours making actual rooted examples of all of these, but I just used a ruler and a pencil and a pen. And I can see so quickly what's feeling good and what doesn't feel good. We gotta work smarter, not harder, folks. Like, I do not have the energy to do all of these examples with an actual router. So what I'm feeling right now is this bottom one, which uses a 10mm router bit and does 4 grooves. I'm just gonna take a step back and make sure that that feels good from a distance. It might be a bit cluttered, actually. It might feel like a bit too much decoration. Oh, the 3 also looks good. I like the 4. I want to go with the 4, this one. Okay, this is what it looks like. I do think it looks very nice. I am thinking it might be a bit too much detail though. Once again, I have to remember that this bit of decoration isn't actually to decorate. It's not meant to be like ornamentation that catches your eye. It's just meant to fit into the style of the door and make it look intentional that it's so much wider on the sides. Okay, I think I'm going to do another example with that original first one I did that's just 3 lines slightly thicker. Part of me is also thinking that if I decide to only do 3 lines, or if I even decide to do 2 lines, it's less work when I actually do it on the doors. Okay, now I have the triple. Feels like too much, honestly. What's going on? How does that feel worse than that? Okay, I'm gonna sleep on this and decide in the morning. I've made a decision about the detail. I'm going to do 3 grooves and they're going to be this size, but I've stepped my router bit up 1 size so I can make them a bit more shallow. There are a million one ways for me to go about actually doing this, but I've decided to go easy as long as I pay careful attention. So I've got my jig set up with the right distance. I'm going to do the middle line first, and it isn't a plunge router, so I just have to very carefully place it down. That all went okay, thankfully, apart from on this side, the bars are slightly higher than this. So every time I would like go over one of them, it would lift it up a bit. I had a stick of dowel which matched this size pretty perfectly. And it also split in half, which is very convenient. So I taped some sandpaper to the 2 halves, and that made it really easy to go down and try and smooth some bits out. There's the odd nick here and there, but I think it's pretty good. So we are finally at the point where we get to start finishing these. And as you know, I like to be as lazy as possible, preserving energy when doing things. So to paint the doors, I don't want to have to individually like tape around every single pane. So I bought this stuff called H2O liquid mask. I think it's like a latex kind of product that you can paint on, and that will act as the mask. So I will paint all of the panes, and then once I've done all the painting and stuff, I can just score around the edge and peel it off.
I won't even try. I don't want to hold you back.
I applied 2 layers of the masking liquid to each of the glass panes, and due to some sort of witchcraft, it works as a mask on glass, like it will peel off very easily, but it works as a primer on wood, so I could be really sloppy with my brush strokes and not have to worry about it. I then sprayed the doors with 2 layers of primer, sanding in between, and we are left with these gorgeous, brilliant white doors that are ready for a top coat. I want to spend a couple minutes talking about colour before we proceed with the help of my Farrow & Ball colour fan. The office is painted pink ground, and the dining room is currently painted dimity, which is this colour, but I'm going to add some Oxford stone to that room as well. So I need to find a colour for the doors that works with all 3 of these. I could do a different colour on each side of the doors, but then they would have to work well together, and that's just too many decisions, so we're just going to pick one colour. When I have to decide on a colour, I always start with what is the feeling I want this space to have, and then how will this colour choice contribute to that feeling. So in the office, I've chosen quite a lot of vibrant colours because I want it to be a really energising space. But I also want it to feel kind of enclosed, so I don't want to draw attention to the doors. Weirdly, in this case, choosing a colour like the wall colour or like our house white, which is pointing, would actually draw more attention to the doors. You'd think it would help them blend in, and it would help the doors blend in, but not the glass panes. It would really draw your attention through to the other room. So I think what's needed for this space is a colour that's tonally similar, but breaks up the wall a little bit so you're not drawn through those glass panes into the next room. All of these colours are in the red family, but Oxford stone compared to pink ground feels really green. So choosing a colour within this family felt like it was clashing on both sides. So I started looking into complementary colours. So those are colours on the opposite side of the colour wheel. I was first very into this colour, Chromity, that the puppy has had a nibble at, but the more I looked at it, the more it was really feeling blue, especially in that dining space. So I then started looking at this colour called Bone, which is still quite neutral, and it's still in the kind of green family. So it works really nicely with pink ground because it will pull out the green in the scheme, and it looks nice and neutral with the dimity. This is also neutral enough that if I change the colour in the office, for example, if we change it into a living room in the future, I won't have to repaint the doors, which would be much harder to repaint than the walls. I hope that rationale all made sense and you are all pro bone. Now we have to sand the doors down one extra time to make sure they're nice and smooth before I spray on the top coat.
My exes and me, we don't talk anymore. If we did, I think it would get pretty ugly. They made me believe love's an open door in the beginning, then they shut it pretty quickly. I thought we were good, at times even great, but apparently I was just one big mistake. My exes and me, we don't talk anymore. If we did, I think it would get pretty ugly. I'm just a victim and not the evil villain, so I'm sorry, not sorry that everyone that crosses my way is gonna feel.
These doors look so good. Let's go put them in the van and get them home.
It's dark and quarantine when you're with me, I'ma show you bad, yeah, I'ma show you bad. When you're with me, I'll never be princess, baby, this way. It's not what it seems. It's dark and quarantine when you're with me.
I've got to do a lot of tightening and adjusting, but wow, I think I nailed it on the colour. I got the doors mounted and levelled and they look fantastic. But the next step is to add the jambs, which are strips of wood with like brushes that go here and on the other side to stop the door swaying that way, so it just like smoothly slides in. But I'm not happy with how this looks. When the glass is covering the edge, you can see the metal strip of the pocket door system there, which is like partially painted with the wall colour. So I think what I'm going to do is take off both of the doors and paint that metal strip and this wall bit in the same colour as the doors. I'm so glad I took the time to paint that bit of wall in the jambs because it totally blends in now. So I put the doors back on. I've also fitted the stopper back there and the brake, so it stops in the middle as well. It's starting to feel like a real door. The next step is to add the handles. For pocket doors that you want totally recessed into the wall, you would usually have recessed handles here and then a kind of like latch thing on the inside to pull it out. but I don't want that because I wouldn't be able to access it from this side very easily. And this is also just too thin for that kind of fitting. The next obvious option would be handles, but you can't use normal handles for sliding doors like this because you need them on both sides and you can't screw them in from the back. So you can get these back-to-back fixing kits, which are very expensive, and there isn't much choice in terms of style. I didn't really like the look of any of the ones I found. So the solution I've decided on, and I've thought about so many options. At one point I was going to make my own handles, but the solution I've decided on are ones that screw in from the front. Again, options for front mounted handles that also were thin enough to fit these doors and not look out of proportion were quite slim, but I've really come round to these the longer I've been staring at them. I'm obsessed. I think they look so good. It's those tiny touches, like me buying like proper nice screws to go in there, that really make or break a project, and I am very happy with these. So we're basically done with most of the door part, but I'm actually waiting on one thing to finish the jambs. So in a few days time I'm going to be able to finish those jambs. I'll also be adding architrave all the way around and picking off all of the little bits of paint that are left on and cleaning up the glass, and I will see you for the final reveal. I finished the doors and they look spectacular. It's been quite a while since I filmed last, thank you MECFS, but I managed to do the architrave all the way around the doors and skirting all the way around this room. I painted up my house white, which is pointing by Farrow & Ball, which is quite a safe option, but it just gives you more flexibility because I think I'm going to repaint the walls of this room in the future. The only other change since I saw you last is that I had to plane down the inside edge of each of the doors to get them to meet properly, and I really liked the way just the raw wood looked. So I decided to sand down the edges of both doors and varnish them, and it just gives this lovely little hit of natural wood as you come in when they're open. It's just one of those little quirks that makes them look and feel extra bespoke. As I've previously said, I did not enjoy the process of stripping these doors, and I shall not be restoring any old doors anytime soon, but I absolutely love this textured glass. The way the light shines through it is just so beautiful. It creates this lovely dappled light on the walls behind, and I think these are something special. So let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and if you would like to support the channel from its early days, you can join us on Patreon. After every video I do an after show with my partner B. We've already done the one for this one and it was great fun. So please do check that out if you're so inclined, and otherwise I will see you in a couple weeks time for B's desk area, which is just over here. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.
Hello. Do I have anything to show you? I just wanted to see you come through the door and we film it.